Hey, Frog fans, welcome back into the Frogs Up TCU Sports Podcast. I am Russ Hodges. That is Anthony North. We are back recording here Sunday evening, recapping the quote unquote football game that took place in Ames, Iowa yesterday evening. TCU going on the road and suffering a 27-14 loss against the Cyclones. It's the fourth consecutive time that TCU has lost in Ames, but the big story, of course, the injury to Chandler Morris. We will talk about that. We will talk about what we saw in the game and just how this team can move forward with a home game coming up next weekend against BYU. We'll also hit on some TCU soccer items and some TCU volleyball items as well, both of those programs continuing conference play. And we'll quickly recap the sixth week of Big 12 conference action. Anthony, I know you're traveling with the fam this weekend. How's your weekend going so far?
Yeah, I think having this fall break fall right here at this point after these two pretty miserable TCU Horned Frog games, it's nice to have a little getaway, find a beach, touch sand, as they say, and you know, I think it's good to get the mind off. I mean, I'm still pretty dedicated to this. I'm here in the hotel room with the family. I've got the kids here, so the expletives won't be flying tonight. But yeah, got to get myself out to Florida to a beach, and still here, still talking this Horned Frogs kind of disaster spiral that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, I think after watching that game last night, we were very much in a let's open a cold one and see where it takes us kind of mood. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll get into everything that transpired during the game yesterday evening here, real quick. But first, of course, our sponsorships. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Charlie Hustle Clothing Company. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh. Go online at charliehustle.com. Use the promo code FROGSOWAR for 15% off all TCU clothing items, or use the promo code 101215 TEN1215 for 15% off any non-sale items. The Patreon is live if you'd like to support the two of us here at Frogs Up or any of the other podcasts involved with the 1012 network. Go online to patreon.com/1012 network. Our partnership with On It Athlete, a brief update here about what's going on with the TCU football trading cards. Pre-sales have been extended. October 2nd was supposed to be the projected shipment date. The most recent update I could provide is they're still waiting on TCU to forward them the photos that they can use to start making up the cards. So there's a little bit of a delay there, but pre-sales are still open if y'all want to check that out. Check out our Facebook or Twitter at Frogs of War. We have information posted there, also on our website at frogsofwar.com, where you can read about all of the latest and greatest in TCU sports. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this football game. TCU Iowa State, pivotal game for the Frogs, looking to bounce back from a loss to West Virginia at home last weekend. A game that we really considered to be a must-win, given the way TCU's schedule is set to play out over the remainder of this year. And it was an ugly football game. I mean, I don't know if y'all can see in the background of my office here, I got a poster of the weekend smoking a cigarette, and that's kind of how I felt. I needed a cigarette after that football game. It was just pretty brutal in all three phases, and Iowa State outplays TCU again in Ames. Again, fourth consecutive win for the Cyclones against TCU at home. 27-14, the final score. But we'll start with the biggest news from this game, the injury to Chandler Morris. For those of you who were not watching, TCU trailed 10-7 at halftime, and third quarter, the Frogs had the football. They ran a quarterback run for Morris, and it was a short gain, picked up a first down, but got tackled awkwardly. Looked like the defender kind of pulled him over, and his knee got bent awkwardly, and it didn't look good when it happened live. And Morris was sidelined for the remainder of the game. There was a shot of him on the sideline with a crutch under one arm, a big old bag of ice on his knee. Josh Hoover came on in relief, did not look very good in relief, struggled with handling the ball, had a turnover. in the third quarter. Was able to throw a touchdown at the very end of the game in garbage time to Blake Nowell, but it was an ugly game for TCU, and the Chandler Morris injury is a huge blow to this offense that has really struggled to find any sort of consistency. And Anthony, as you watched this game and you saw the Chandler Morris injury happen live, just what's your biggest takeaway from this injury, and what does this mean now for TCU moving forward over this second half of the season?
Man, you just feel terrible for Chandler. I mean, for him to go through all of last season leading up to the 2022 season, win that camp battle, go into that first game of the season and go out with a knee injury, and all that transpired the rest of that season. He comes into this season again is the number one quarterback and is leading the team into this season that is expected to be a big time season again. That doesn't happen, and then this injury is. I just feel so bad for him because he has put in a ton of work and he has continued to get more and more comfortable in this offense and continue to be not just TCU's best option at quarterback, but a very good option for the Horned Frogs. And so you hate to see injuries of any kind, but this one, I don't know yet. I haven't been on social media scrolling or anything much today, so I don't know if there's been news yet about the injury to the extent of, whether this is a season ender or whether it's something he'll try to rehab back and be back for BYU this coming week or sometime in between. But, I think given that it's happened again to, I think, the same knee, and I don't know. I think the TV eye doctor, the doctor from afar, the couch potato eye doctor or knee doctor, I'm worried about it. I think it's not going to be good. That said, Josh Hoover, his first efforts in this game and his efforts this season have been quite bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've said for some time, like, man, if Chandler Morris goes down, this season is really in trouble. And I still certainly feel that way. This season is already in trouble. This season is in a toilet bowl as it is. But and I think I've been more down on Hoover than the general consensus. But I do think that there was some positives to take away from his performance, as throwing him into the fire like that, trailing in the game. He's coming in fully cold, no expectation to be the guy in that game. And yes, he was terrible right from the jump. It was bad. But as he settled in a little bit more, I think there were some positives to take away from it. I think that maybe the offense will simplify and TCU will be able to get something going in a different way, maybe lean even more on the excellent work of Amani Bailey. Maybe something good comes of it. But the way Hoover came into this game, man, I don't know. It's gonna be really, really tough for the TCU offense.
Yeah, going back to the summer and even before the summer, going all the way back to the spring, when we were recapping the 2022 season and we saw Sam Jackson leave through the transfer portal, he winds up at Cal. Max Duggan, of course, declares for the NFL draft. You have two scholarship quarterbacks at that point in Chandler Morris and Josh Hoover. And, just to quickly summarize what TCU tried to do to upgrade that room from the end of last year to where we are now, they went after Sawyer Robertson. They went after Walker Howard. They went after Jaden Rashada. They struck out on all three of those guys. They did manage to get a post-spring addition to the quarterback room in Chance Nolan, the veteran from Oregon State. He leaves the program gosh, I don't know, 3 or 4 practices into fall camp when it
Not
was
even.
clear that he
Yeah.
probably wasn't going to be the guy. And so, TCU really ultimately fell back to square one with the quarterback situation, and that you have essentially 2 scholarship quarterbacks in Chandler Morris and Josh Hoover. And considering that Chandler Morris had the shoulder injury at the end of 2021 that kept him out for a couple games, the knee injury last season against Colorado, and now this same knee injury. And Ray Cartwright did report earlier today that it's an MCL injury. And my guess is, considering that we're 6 games in, I don't know if we'll see Chandler Morris again this season if it is an MCL issue. I guess it depends on the severity of the issue. If it's just a sprain or a tear, an MRI will get that cleared up. But I'm kind of operating under the assumption that this is going to be Josh Hoover's team for the remainder of the season. And when we talked about what could go wrong for TCU this year, the first thing that you and I discussed was, should there be a hit to the quarterback room, this team is going to be in big trouble. And the success of this team kind of hinged on Chandler Morris's play and him staying healthy. And it's kind of unfair that was the case. But when you lose so much talent and so many great linemen and so many great skill players, good defenders, he was going to have to be the guy to kind of carry the load for this team. And you hate to see him go down with an injury. And I hate to see some fans on social media say that, it's a good thing that Morris got hurt because Hoover's the better quarterback. No, Josh Hoover's not a better quarterback.
It's just not true.
It's not true. Yeah, Chandler Morris is the best quarterback on this team. And yes, he had a really bad first half in this game, and we'll get into more of what happened in this game here shortly. But as a whole, for a quarterback really still in his first full year as a starter, he's done some really good things for TCU this season. He's made some rookie mistakes, but he hasn't been a scrub by any means. TCU has had quarterbacks come in and play much, much worse than Chandler Morris. So it's a really unfortunate situation, and you hope that he can come back and finish the season to some degree. But it's going to be Josh Hoover's team, I think, for BYU and maybe for the rest of the season. And I agree with what you said about his performance, and that he got a little bit more comfortable as the game went on. He had a couple good throws in the fourth quarter. He had a nice completion over the middle to Dalen Wright that picked up about 20 plus yards. He had a nice deep ball that he threw down the sideline to Savion Williams. Granted, it was in double coverage, but it was a really good, well-placed ball that Savion had a chance to make a play on and just couldn't come up with it. But he had some plays where he looked like a redshirt freshman that had hardly played. He comes in and, just like he did against Nicholls State, fumbles his first snap and then throws an interception shortly after that where the ball was just kind of thrown right to the defender. But it's a little exciting, I guess, to see this is going to be his time to show what he can do and show that he has the potential to be a Power 5 quarterback. And I think moving forward without Chandler Morris, how you tweak this offense is you're going to have to really dedicate yourself to running the football. And I guess we can use that to kind of segue into what went well for TCU in this game from a positive perspective. Amani Bailey had a hell of a game. He was running hard. There were big holes for him. 152 rushing yards on 21 carries. Also had a couple big plays in the passing game. He is your best player, I think, right now on offense. Just overall, receivers, running backs, linemen, quarterback. He's your best player. He's got to be your featured guy from here on out, especially with Morris injured. Trey Sanders really hasn't played much the last few weeks. I don't know if he's fallen out of favor with the coaching staff, but he's going to need to get some run. Cam Cook, the 4-star freshman, has played sparingly. I don't know if they want to burn his red shirt, but you might have to if you want to make it to a bowl game. So TCU ran the ball really well in this game. The offensive line, I thought, played better than it did against West Virginia. And there were some adjustments there. I have to give the coaching staff some credit. And I know we had texted back and forth about this in our Frogs of War group chat, that The quote unquote strong side of the line with Coleman at left guard and Coker at left tackle just wasn't getting the job done. And so TCU in this game actually moved Andrew Coker back to right tackle where he's played the last few years. They kicked Brandon Coleman back out to left tackle. They brought in Colton Deary, the Maryland transfer, to play left guard, 6'4", 345 pounds, just a mammoth human being to pair with Willis Patrick at right guard, who's 6'4", 347. So TCU's offensive line, they made some adjustments, and they were getting better push. There was better blocking up front, and Amani Bailey was breaking off some big runs. So that was a big positive, I think. And TCU is really going to have to dedicate itself to running the football here over the next several weeks. And then defensively, TCU had a great first half. I thought they did everything possible to keep the team in the game and give the Frogs a chance in the second half. But they just got worn down as the game went on. And you could see it. The defensive line was not getting any leverage off the line of scrimmage. Iowa State began to run the ball really well in the second half. Defensively, though, first half, really good effort holding Iowa State to 10 points, forcing multiple 3-and-outs early in the game. So those are the positives for me. Anthony, as you were watching this game, what were some of the positives that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the defense was really good in that the first part of this game, but the field position battle here and the time on the field battle was just killer to them. I mean, I think that TCU's defense did enough early in this game for TCU to have been ahead by 3 scores right off the bat in the first quarter. If TCU's offense didn't completely fall on its face and stumble in every possible way, whatever slapstick gif meme that comes to mind when you think of that, I think of that like as seen on TV commercial where the guy's like falling over carrying stuff out to his car and it's just like flopping all over himself. That's what TCU's offense was doing in the first part of this game, and because of that, TCU's defense was just put in terrible positions. And for across the entire game, Iowa State's average starting field position was at its own 37-yard line. So you're approaching midfield with 1 first down. That's putting yourself in a tough position as a defense. So yeah, I thought they were pretty terrific. I thought the secondary was great there in that first part, but I could feel the wear and kind of just they just took a big sigh and just like, God, I can't take this. It felt like it was just like all right, they let that foot off the gas a little bit in the second half, and it snowballed. I mean, the rushing yards here, a couple of those rushing touchdowns where Iowa State just runs. I know we're supposed to be talking positives. I took your positive and I'm turning it into a negative. I apologize for that, but I guess I can save that for negatives. But so that was good. And that's the way this game went, and that's the way the last 2 games have gone, is like whatever positive there is to say, there's something that went way, way worse that outweighs any kind of positive that you can find. What else did we say was positive? I mean, yeah, the offensive line improved, I guess. I mean, Brandon Coleman returned, but they still gave up a couple sacks, 2 sacks, 5 tackles for loss. You get a punt blocked. I guess that's not offensive line. I guess that's special teams. I guess that's a positive. Amani Bailey is absolutely a positive. That man, he's carrying this team right now to the extent that he's able to do it. Another huge performance, and yeah, he's the man. He's the only guy right now who's really putting that. You see the effort, you see the drive from him to be great, and he's putting it on the field. I'd like to see that from everyone else. So what positives are there to take away? Well, the positives are that game is over, and now you've got another game to go play, because that game uh, is about as bad as you could get.
Yeah, and I guess we'll use that to transition into some of the big negatives from this game. And the offense, it was much of the same stuff collectively that we've seen all season. And they showed the stats on the broadcast roughly halfway through the second quarter where TCU had 208 yards over a quarter and a half and had 7 points to show for it. And we're beating the dead horse at this point, but TCU's offense just continues to find new and interesting ways to shoot itself in the foot. I mean, you have your first drive, get to the red zone, and Chandler Morris just throws a terrible interception. And for what it's worth, Chandler Morris did not play well in this game. I'll say that he had some very poor decisions early in this game. The red zone interception, which I think is his second or third red zone interception this season,
At
where
least
he just
three. Yeah.
just straight up didn't see the defender and threw the ball right to him. And then another play where TCU is slowly moving the ball, and then Morris throws it to Dalen Wright over the middle. Looks like he should be able to make that grab and just can't possess the ball, and Iowa State's defender just rips the ball right out of his hands. And it results in an interception and another potential scoring drive stalled. And the worst offensive play, one of the two worst offensive plays of the evening, where TCU is faced with a 4th and 1, and Chandler Morris and Amani Bailey run into each other in the backfield. And Morris is tackled for a loss of 3, and it results in a turnover on downs. Like these are just the kinds of things that have been happening for TCU's offense all year long. And it's so frustrating because you see the yards pile up again, empty calorie yards, and this offense just cannot put points on the board. And to give credit to Chandler Morris, the one really good throw he had early in the game where he's scrambling out of the pocket, he finds Savion Williams in the end zone. That was a big play there to tie the score at 7. But offensively, just TCU finds new ways to make mistakes. And then you go into the second half, and for the second consecutive week, TCU is just dominated in the third quarter. I mean, TCU, I think, was held to single digit yards in the third quarter, if I'm not
They
mistaken.
had 6 times as many yards as they had in the last game in the third quarter, so that must be good because they got 6 total
one
yards.
times 6, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just, and then of course Chandler Morris gets hurt. Josh Hoover comes in, and you have a play late in this game where if Josh Hoover is going to be your guy for the foreseeable future, try to get him some real red zone type reps. Don't run a trick play where you do a double pass for JP Richardson and it results in one of the most hilariously bad interceptions that I think I've seen from any player. And the trick plays for TCU this year have just been an absolute disaster. It doesn't matter if it's on offense or on special teams. Just please stop with the trick plays because they're not working, and just rip those plays out of the playbook. So that the offense, it was just a lot of the same stuff that we've talked about on this podcast several times. And then the special teams, I don't know what the heck is going on with TCU special teams right now. I don't know if they're just not doing a lot of work in practice or what the heck the deal is, but Jordy Sandy suddenly can't punt the ball more than 30 something yards. He's shanking balls 20. I think he had a 26-yard punt in this game. You have Griffin Kell kicking the ball out of bounds on a kickoff. You've got Major Everhart taking balls out of the end zone, and he's not even getting to the 20-yard line. Like, and then you have the punt block. Like, this is just the special teams is just embarrassing right now for TCU. And Mark Tomberdahl, special teams coach, might be feeling a little bit of heat after this one because the special teams for TCU for most of the season, but specifically over these last few games, has been an absolute joke. Like Jordy Sandy is a 5th-year player. Griffin Kell is a 5th-year player. some of these mistakes are just embarrassing. And then the penalties on top of that. TCU had 7 penalties in this game. And right now, I looked at some of these recent games. TCU had 6 penalties against West Virginia. We talked about the penalties against Colorado, penalties in the Nicholls State game. This is just an undisciplined football team right now. And it's so frustrating to watch some of these penalties because a lot of them are just really stupid. And these coaches are going to have to start facing the music a little bit here when it comes to some of these mistakes, because this team, Sonny Dykes made the comment after the West Virginia game that last year's team found ways to win and fight through adversity, and this team is finding ways to lose. But you know what? We're 6 games into the season now, and the issues that were happening week 1 are still happening week 6. So at some point, it's less about the players and more about the guys in charge of coaching them. And maybe things will get turned around here against BYU. And with Chandler Morris out, we'll see what this team is really made of, and we'll see who steps up and starts to show some leadership. But it's just ugly right now. I mean, the second half was just like a boulder rolling down a mountain. It was just a snowball effect, and it was just really, really frustrating to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what more can be said about much of this. TCU went into the game as 122nd in the country in red zone scoring, and fell a spot after this game to a tie for 123rd in the country in red zone scoring opportunity, or converting points out of red zone scoring opportunities. And they are, oh man, I just had the stat up. I think it's 6 touchdowns in 24 red zone attempts this season. 6. I mean, that's really, really bad. And some of that is you're going for it on 4th downs because you really want to get the touchdown instead of the field goal, but you're not picking those up. So yeah, beating the dead horse there. It's really bad. Special teams, yeah, I don't know what's happened here, because TCU was pretty great at special teams last season and has the entire unit back, save for kick returners. So yeah, I mean, Darius Davis may be one of a kind type talent there, but it's the same guys at the specialist positions, and maybe that's a little bit of when you probably should be in like your 3rd year of having gone pro in something other than sports, and you're still on campus. I don't know. I mean, maybe those guys just thought they could roll out of bed and put up the same performance that they did a year ago, because they both, Sandy and Kell, have had pretty bad seasons. Not bad for their standards, just bad. So I don't know. That's unless there's some amount of like weird luck to special teams, which to some extent there is. I mean, we talked last week about the offense putting Kell in such terrible positions. Like, you're not going to hit 50-yard field goals all the time, but kicking a kickoff out of bounds, what are we doing? 26-yard punts, every punt is going under 40 yards. You're getting punts blocked at the end of the half, giving free points at the end of the half. All you got to do is get that punt off, and you're walking into halftime. Man, it's really bad. And yeah, you talked about the nice moment that Morris had, where he's running for his life and throws a ball and somehow escapes like 6 defenders and throws a ball, finds Savion Williams in the end zone. I mean, yeah, he's being forced to run for his life because there's nothing. The protection isn't there, and the guys aren't open at the actual play being called on the field. So, it's hard to find ways to see it getting better. Is the challenging thing here for us talking about this is like, yeah, we've been talking about this same nonsense for 6 weeks of like figure out how to get first downs and successfully find the end zone. And I don't know. I don't know.
I guess if we're looking big picture here for TCU, the team is now 3-3, 1-2 in the Big 12. You have BYU at home next week, and then you go to Manhattan to play Kansas State, and you have a bye week after that. I think we started to adjust our expectations for the season after the loss to West Virginia, but now we really have to after this loss and losing Chandler Morris to the knee injury. So, for me, I think the goal really for the remainder of the season is just to get to 6 wins and try to find 3 wins over the remainder of the schedule and get to a bowl game. It's going to be really difficult because your schedule is backloaded. You still have to play Oklahoma, you still have to play Texas, you still have to play Texas Tech in Lubbock, and you still have to play Kansas State in Manhattan. So it's going to be a big time challenge for this coaching staff that has frankly really struggled this year to get this team to 6 wins. But I think for the TCU offense, we've talked a lot about the wide receivers and the amount of depth and talent that is in that receiving group. They were not really getting any separation in this game against Iowa State, which was really disappointing. I know during our midweek episode, we talked about who could be guys that step up and become the go-to players for this TCU offense. We talked about Dalen Wright maybe being one of those guys. Earlier this year, we talked about Savion Williams and J.P. Richardson. And I think those guys have had flashes, but consistently from game to game, TCU just doesn't have that guy. They don't have that X factor on this offense. And I think for the offense moving from Chandler Morris to Josh Hoover now, you're going to be forced to run the ball more. And I think it's going to be an exciting challenge for the offensive line and this running back room with Amani Bailey and Trey Sanders and Cam Cook and everybody else that you're probably going to get fed the rock. And the offense is going to be hopefully running through that backfield. And if TCU can run the ball the way that it has in multiple games this year, including against Iowa State, I think that could set up for some easy completions for Josh Hoover. The last thing that this offense should do is put the ball in the hands of Josh Hoover and make him throw the ball 30 plus times a game. This has got to be a run heavy offense, I think, from this point. So Josh Hoover can get comfortable, get experienced, make the easy throws that are there, and grind out that play clock, keep the opposing team's offense off the field, because that'll allow your defense to be rested up. And the defense, frankly, has been a bright spot over the last few weeks. And so, of course, the defense needs to find some ways to get more pressure, but the secondary has been very good over the last few weeks. I think the linebacker play, again, Johnny Hodges did not play for, I think, the 3rd week in a row now with that hand injury, but Nnamdi Obiizor has been excellent. Shad Banks has done a really nice job. He had a really nice play early in this game for a tackle for a loss of, I think, 5 yards. So control the clock, run the football effectively, make the game easier for your young quarterback, and give your defense an opportunity to make plays. And if TCU can do all of those things without turning the ball over like they did 4 times against Iowa State, I think you'll have an opportunity to get to 6 wins and possibly go to a bowl game.
Yeah, see, I think this next 6 games, it's actually going to be more on those receivers to go get it done because just like you said, TCU should their best opportunity will be to do whatever they can to get Amani Bailey the ball with some room to run. But every defense that TCU goes against will be begging Josh Hoover to throw the ball. They will put every single cornerback on an island. They will put every man in the box that they can to ensure that Bailey isn't the guy killing them. So I do think that forces something to happen from Hoover and those receivers to just get something through the pass game to make defenses at least respect it even a tiny amount. Because right now there's no reason to even really trot any defense that's meant to stop a pass play. If Josh Hoover's going to throw the ball right to you, then you're going to welcome it into your awaiting arms. So yeah, I think it'll be, man, you say it looks fine for TCU to figure out how to get to 6 games. I'm not sure I see it. And one of the things that's so unfortunate about this particular season, how it's going for TCU, is how much of a garbage can the Big 12 is. There's really, and we thought it going into the season, and it's still true now, and even more true that, you look at the schedule, TCU should be, easily 6-7 wins. You go to the Kansas State game, maybe that's a toss-up. Kansas State just lost a terrible game to Oklahoma State. All right, maybe that's an easier game than you thought. Texas Tech is worse than everyone thought. Baylor's worse than everyone thought. So you really have 2 games that should have been losable games on the schedule. 2.5. Kansas State's a losable game, sure. So you go into the season, and the way this particular season is playing out, TCU should have had 2.5 losable to toss-up games. And instead, you're already sitting with 3 losses before even getting to those games. So, I think this season probably, in a lot of TCU fans' minds, should have gone like 2015, where, that season Trevon Boykin was back and Josh Doxson was back, so it's a little bit different personnel-wise. But you come back after this extremely successful season, and you're primed for another successful season, and you do have a very successful season, but just a little tier break below. You're not quite as good. You don't quite have the injury luck. You don't quite have the balls bounce that way. Instead, TCU is just like straight in the ditch, which I don't think anybody expected. And it's unfortunate because there's really just no reason for it. There's no reason that TCU should not have built off that success and gone into this Big 12, this particular Big 12, and dominated up to at least those 3 games. So looking at the schedule ahead, BYU, highly losable. Toss-up game at best, 50-50. Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be really, really close to see if TCU actually gets to a bowl game this season. I think my bet would be against it at this point. I think TCU is going to just have to prove me wrong now.
And Vegas, for whatever reason, has TCU as a 5-point favorite over BYU. I'm not sure if the bookies out in Vegas know something that we don't, but I think it's fair to say that right now this TCU season is at its low point, and we hope that it doesn't get any lower than this. And hopefully we're talking about a win over BYU next week. It's going to be a home game next Saturday. I'm not sure of the time. I think it might be
2:30.
2:30.
I want to say
okay.
2:30.
Got an afternoon kickoff. There's going to be a lot of BYU fans at the Carter that day. So let's fill the stadium with purple. Let's not do what we did against West Virginia and only fill about, 2/3 of that west side. The 400 level was pretty empty during that game. I think it was kind of a mediocre home crowd for the West Virginia game, and hopefully there's a better crowd for this BYU game. And it's a little bit of a rivalry, a renewal of Mountain West action, and these rivalry games, I know I've mentioned it before on this podcast, it never really seems to matter what the records are, who's playing. Anything can happen in some of these rivalry type environments. So
BYU coming off a bye week,
Mhm.
ready to go get its second Big 12 win, but first Big 12 win over, one of the legacy members. Yeah, I mean, BYU will be very, very up for that game and very, very happy to take on a TCU team that is struggling.
And we will recap that game when we are back on the podcast next weekend. We will, speaking of the Big 12, talk about some of the results here from over the weekend. Of course, the Red River rivalry was the big game of the week, not only in the Big 12, but nationally. The Sooners come away with a win, 34-30. Dylan Gabriel had a fantastic performance in this game, and Oklahoma has cemented its status right now as the number one team in the conference. Texas, though, is not slipping too far because Kansas State dropped a game against Oklahoma State, who has really struggled this year. Kansas State was down bad in the first half, was losing, I think, 23-7 at one point, and made a little bit of a comeback late, but the Cowboys win 29-21, and just a huge win for Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State when it seemed like that program was kind of dead in the water to start the season, and a really bad loss for a Kansas State team with high expectations. Will Howard had 3 interceptions in this game, was a very uncharacteristic performance from him. But that Kansas State loss creating an opportunity for Texas to hang around and cling to that number 2 spot in the conference as the season moves
Not in the
forward.
standings though. Right now it's West Virginia sitting there with
Yeah,
no
not in the
losses.
standings, but I think
In
we
the
all
hearts and
know.
minds. Sure.
Yeah, West Virginia is kind of carrying the mantle right now of the current
The
Big
hateful
12
eight.
teams that'll be in the conference. So I think
Yeah.
a lot of us fans for some of these other programs, TCU, Iowa State, UCF, others are begging and pleading for West Virginia to somehow make a run and stay atop those standings. But elsewhere in the Big 12, Kansas dominating UCF 51-22. Jalen Daniels didn't play, but it didn't matter. Kansas's offense has looked really, really good this year. They ran the ball insanely well in this game. I think I was looking at the stats at some point, and Kansas had 100 yards passing or less than 100 yards passing, and still found a way to put up 51 points. Crazy stuff from the Jayhawks after a tough loss against Texas last week. And then Texas Tech rolling over Baylor 39-14. Baylor not able to build off of that miraculous comeback against UCF last week where they scored 26 fourth quarter points. Texas Tech rolls 39-14. So, Anthony, any thoughts on these results?
Yeah, man. Kansas. I flipped over to the Kansas game for like 2 plays, and as soon as I turned it over, Devin Neal is just sprinting past the UCF defense for a touchdown. I think Baylor may have fully broken UCF, and a week prior where they have that comeback. Yeah, that was an ugly performance from the Knights. Oklahoma. I keep telling you that the Oklahoma Alabama national championship game. Watch out for it. It's still on the table. Dylan Gabriel's Heisman campaign still on the table. Quinn Ewers' Heisman campaign. The dirt is being tossed on to its coffin there. Yeah, man, you big hats off to you for the note on the trap game about the Oklahoma State Kansas State. I was not a believer there. I thought Kansas State would roll with great ease, but Will Howard finally had a clunker. I think he's been so consistent and so efficient and so terrific for the Wildcats that I did not see that performance coming from him there. That and they still really had every chance to go and stay alive in this game, even though that his terrible turnovers and really Oklahoma State was taking it to him. But then Kansas State just they have ways to score and to stick around in these games, even when they're well outclassed. So Like you said, that's a huge win for Gundy, and he really needed that one. I think that the whispers were getting louder there of just like what's going on here. So good for them. I didn't watch any of the Baylor Texas Tech game. I think that may have been on at the same time as the TCU game. So I I don't really have any thoughts there other than Baylor continues to not be very good. And Taj Brooks, the running back for Texas Tech, is a superstar, and I think the Big 12 has a lot of incredible running back talent. I don't know how the voters for like all Big 12 conference at the end of the season are going to sort out who to put at the top of the list for the Big 12 running backs. It's a stacked position group for the conference this year. But yeah, this certainly this week very clearly puts Oklahoma way at the top of the conference power rankings, and puts the Sooners right in position to be reaching the playoff again, and likely a one and done again.
And if y'all want to learn any more about what's been going on in the Big 12 from week to week, one of our staff writers, Austin McGee, has been doing a fantastic job of recapping the Big 12 football results at our website, frogsofwar.com. So check that out online or on social media if you want to learn more about what's going on in the Big 12 for football. I think that'll do it for our football content this evening. We have some TCU soccer and TCU volleyball items to hit on before we close out. TCU soccer, we talked about on our midweek episode, had picked up a 1-0 win over Kansas while we were doing the podcast live, and then played Texas Tech on the road in a huge match in the conference standings earlier today. 0-0 tie at halftime, and then midway through the second half, TCU had a unfortunate turnover that resulted in a gain of possession and a second half goal for the Red Raiders, who ultimately won the match 1-0. So TCU had its conference losing streak snapped, I believe, at 6 games, but still off to a really good start. This soccer team, 9-4-2 on the season, 5-1-1 in the conference. TCU will have 2 home matches coming up. They will host Houston on Thursday, and then the Baylor Bears will come to town on Sunday. So get out to Garvey Rosenthal, support the TCU soccer team. The schedule is coming to a close here pretty shortly. TCU has these 2 home matches, and then they will play at Texas and Austin before starting the Big 12 tournament. So, Anthony, I know you weren't able to catch any of this action today, but just given what you've seen from this team throughout most of the season, what are your thoughts on just where the team stands right now as they get ready to close out the regular season here over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, this loss stings for this team. I think that they really felt like they could go get a positive result there against Texas Tech, the big dogs in the conference right now. And TCU still has an opportunity to get the points to tie or get past Texas Tech, but the clock's running out on the season, and it looks like TCU is going to be more so in a race with Texas and BYU for the number 2 spot. Having dropped this game to Texas Tech, where they now have the tiebreaker, on the head-to-head win is really tough, and Texas Tech remains unbeaten in the conference, where TCU picks up its first loss. It's really unfortunate, but it's still everything ahead for TCU. This squad has really turned it on, and should be rolling into the end of the season, into the conference tournament, and into the NCAA tournament, ready for another big run, and hopefully continues further through that bracket of the NCAA tournament later this year.
Mm-hmm. And TCU volleyball continued Big 12 play this past weekend as well. TCU hosted Cincinnati on Friday and Saturday, so the series concluded yesterday. A marathon of a match on Friday, went 5 sets, and I think TCU, this is one that the Frogs would probably want back. I think they outplayed Cincinnati in this Friday match, but some unforced errors in this match, some service errors for TCU, some hitting errors as well. And Cincinnati ultimately gets the win 3-2, but TCU came right back yesterday and really dominated the match, the second match against the Bearcats, winning it 3-0, a 3-set sweep. Some really good individual performances from the Frog players this weekend. Riley Buckley had 76 assists over 2 matches. Sarah Sylvester in the middle has been a really dynamic defensive player for this team. She had 9 blocks to lead the way in the Friday match, and then 8 blocks yesterday. The result yesterday, this was by far the best defensive performance that TCU had all season. They held Cincinnati to a hitting percentage of almost 0. Cincinnati's offense was entirely shut down in this match. It wasn't remotely close, and the girls up front have been doing a tremendous job of getting to the blocks and getting good touches on balls. So a conference split with the Bearcats moves TCU to 11-6 on the season, 4-2 in the conference, and TCU will hit the road now for a pair of road conference matches at Oklahoma on Wednesday and then at West Virginia on Saturday. So we will continue to, of course, cover soccer and volleyball and every other athletic program in action right now for TCU at our website, frogsofwar.com. Be sure to check us out on Facebook and Twitter as well at Frogs of War. And I think that'll do it for our weekend episode. Anthony, any final thoughts here before we wrap things up?
No, that's it. Let's dig into this BYU team and see what it'll take for the Horned Frogs to go get back on the right track finally after these 2 really tough games.
Absolutely. We'll have our midweek episode, of course, coming a few days from now. We will preview the BYU game, talk about how the Horned Frogs can come back and get a much, much needed win over the Cougars at Ames Carter Stadium this coming weekend. Once again, this episode brought to y'all by our friends at Charlie Hustle Clothing Company. Go to charliehustle.com, use the promo code FrogsOWar, 15% off all TCU items, or use the promo code 101215 TEN1215, get 15% off all non-sale items. The Patreon, if you'd like to support Frogs Up or the 1012 Network, go to patreon.com/1012 Network. I'm Russ Hodges. That is Anthony North. That's all we have for you this evening. We'll see you next time, and we'll sign off with the Frogs Up.
Frogs Up.